Okay guys, I am back at Mainframe Studios, down below at the entrance by the parking garage. I'm headed in to meet a photographer today. So we're gonna take a look at her photography. She does some graphic design, she does some digital collage work. It's going to be pretty exciting. I can't wait to see what she uses, how she does it, and what her space looks like. So join me inside as we head upstairs, or more than likely up the elevator, to check out our photographer and artist today.
Hi everybody, my name is Jami Milne. I'm an artist, and the type of art that I mostly do is photography. So you are here in my studio at Mainframe. My studio is located downtown, and you're looking at my desk and a lot of my artwork behind me, which I think it's really important when you make art to always put it up. Sometimes you put up things that aren't yours, like this heart, but oftentimes you should fill it with all of the things that you create so that you always have that art that you make behind you and close to you. And this is my desk with all of my important things. Having nature nearby is important to me. This is my camera. So this is always very close. This is how I hold it. Having my laptop is important because that's where I look and start to edit my pictures. Having different kinds of cameras. An old Polaroid is really fun for me to have and take pictures with. And this probably sounds silly, but I have to have my coffee. I'm going to show you some of my artwork that I have behind me that I think that you might like to hear a little bit more about. So this picture, it can be hard to see in the light, but you can see these long legs and point shoes. So this is actually a ballerina that I photographed underwater. And what I think is really special about this is that I can't swim and generally have a bit of a fear of water. So I borrowed someone's pool, she let me come over, and the dancer would float down into the water with this blanket, and I would go underneath with my underwater camera. But I'm going to tell you really quickly, cameras don't sink, they float, and they weigh more than me. So I would go down to take the picture, but whoop, I would float back up. So the person whose pool it was had to stand behind me and push me down so I could stay underneath long enough to get the shot. And then I would kick her or kick at her when she knew, oh, I have to let her up so she can breathe. That was a ridiculous shoot. And for someone who's afraid of water, it was a really brave thing to do as a photographer. But this is a ballerina, and I'm actually the creative director with Ballet Des Moines. So I shoot all of their dancers. This is one I photographed a few years ago now, and this was actually in a laundromat. And what was so special, I love being able to bring art into other communities. That's very important for me and important for the ballet as well. But this dancer and I went to a laundromat we had never been in before. And what was so cool is these two young men walked in and they were out playing for the night. And they came in because they saw us in there and wanted to know, what are you doing in here? What are you doing in our laundromat? So we invited them over to meet the dancer, and so I took a few silly pictures of them and the ballerina together. This is also a ballerina. She's in a more traditional tutu, although she's upside down. So some of my art is collage work. So I will take pictures. Sometimes I do it with magazines. I cut them up and glue them together. And sometimes I do a digital collage, so I'll use the computer. So I took this image of her. She was actually standing upright, so I flipped her because I liked the shape of this. And this picture behind her is a picture I took when I was in Santa Cruz. It was actually the 4th of July. And with my camera, I actually made it go out of focus. So instead of being able to see all of the lights on the water, I shifted my lens so it made everything blurry and go out of focus. And so then I took these two pictures and put them together and created art out of that. A lot of times I'll do that with collage. So I will take a magazine picture and I cut out an apple and I put them together and photographed it. This collage I'm going to pull off and show you. When my son was little, in order to be able to read the New York Times, I would let him draw on the pages when I was done with them so I could read the other sections. So he would draw funny, usually mustaches, on everyone in the magazine. But this one day, I was helping him while he was doing it off to the side. We were doing some Day of the Dead type scribbles on the page. And he was playing with some of his toys. And I saw 3 arms from Mr. Potato Head. And so I moved them over to my picture. And this is inspired by an artist called James Victori. He does a lot of letter writing and posters. And so I just put this all together and snapped a picture and thought it was pretty special. But you can see one other shot where I use collage and my photography. This is a picture of my daughter, whose face says it all, where she's like, "Mom, stop making me do work with you." But I cut out this little model from a magazine and I placed it on her shoulder. So sometimes I'll do quirky things where I'll just put stuff in new places to see what sort of art that makes. So this part of my studio is where I would be standing when I'm taking pictures. Now this is actually a pretty thin studio for a photographer. A lot of times you need more space than this, but since I do a lot of portrait work, meaning I'm doing a lot of images where you might just see here to here, I actually like to be pretty close. And I also think one way to really get someone to be natural is to just talk to them. So I will oftentimes set a chair or a stool in my space and I tell them to sit down and I say, we're just gonna have a conversation. And what I do is I get my tripod set right here and I get it set up so that when I look through it, I would be able to see them right in the middle of my backdrop. And so what I can do, since this is pretty close to where my eye naturally is, I would just stand here and I would say, tell me what you had for breakfast. Talk to me about your family, or tell me what brings you joy. And then I start to see them moving their hands and looking at the camera and being really expressive. So I'm going to show you over here. If you keep coming with me, you would see them. They would be right here. So they're out of the bright light, but there's still so much light that comes into this studio. So they'd be standing right here and I have just enough light to photograph them. And so oftentimes people get really nervous and they say, "Ugh, I hate having my picture taken," or "Ugh, what do I do with my hands?" And so usually what I do, stay right there, I'll bring a chair in, and before we even, well, I tell them it's before we're shooting, but I'm really taking pictures while we're shooting. I'll tell them to sit down, and they can cross their legs, or sometimes I'll say, why don't you sit like this, and lean into me, and then when I take their picture, I get my camera nice and low, so that I'm leaning into them, and then it's just kind of like you're talking to your friend, or you're talking to your buddy, or someone that cares about you, and then you just have a conversation. And you'll find when you just talk to people, that makes them feel like you're not forcing them to smile, but you're just talking. And then they start thinking about joyous things. And so they'll start smiling, and you see how I'm moving my hands and making all these different shapes? I am click, 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 clicking away. So that way I don't just have a picture of this, but I have a picture like this, or like, or this, or ah ha ha, because they're laughing. And so that's the style of portraiture that I like to take. And normally I have a white backdrop because it's just simple, and then that lets the person really stand out. And sometimes I shoot on a dark background like this. It makes it a little more dramatic or a little bit more moody, but it all depends on the person and what it is we're trying to shoot together.